This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation.
So one woman raised brings in other women. If we look at specifically the example of Rwanda, it was forced from the point of view that when Kagame looked at who would represent or who would help him in government, all he saw was 70% of the population, which was women already. And so he had to choose from that. However, the effects that he saw from that in terms of legislation and government were actually then very good. He's lauded the world over for having made the decision to go that way, which in actuality wasn't his decision. It was forced because of what he saw before him. And what we saw then was, in terms of legislation, things that were actually able to change. One example was, the legalization of abortion in cases where women were raped, and which was very many cases we saw as a result of the genocide. So you saw legalization of abortion when women were raped. You saw legalization of abortion when the health of the mother was taken into, was actually endangered. And that would only have been, pushed at the level as that it was by a woman. And those things were done because if you look at the example of Rwanda, many legislators who were women felt that, at that point, men were just not interested in having that legislation pushed forward. So that's one example of how you would see it would be of benefit, because there are certain things that affect women specifically. And if they are in positions of government or positions of leadership, you would need somebody who understands the intricacies of it to have that brought forward.
There's no question, Eric. I'm surprised you asked that question. There's no question about the sort of impact and the benefits and the importance of having women in power, from policy outcome right to, sort of inclusion. The list is endless. You do need women there. I think what Du is suggesting, and the question should be whether it's the right way to go about it, is have a forced number of
a quota
where it's legislated.
Yeah.
And what would your quota be? 50-50 or 2/3, or what figure would you put on it?
Well, if we were looking at 50-50 as what, if we're looking at Kenya, for example, of what the population represents, we're basically at 50-50. So why not?
In Parliament, you would want 50% of the women, so that's the quota you would force. And then how would we put these women there? Male, only the men go through the democratic process of being elected, and then the women are just appointed, or how would you go about it?
Well, I don't know exactly how it would work in terms of how you would vote them in, but I do know that in Rwanda, for example, it was the women who are involved in voting women in, making sure that their needs or that their legislative policies are actually seen or brought to fruition. I don't know the nitty-gritty of how you would actually have that happen, but I think it's something that definitely.
But you're saying they should be voted in then? Or what? Because when you talk about
if it's a quota, you would, there's
how would you meet
this quota? You let them to be appointed.
Yes,
they would be appointed. Isn't that undemocratic?
You can't have your cake and eat it.
We can also elect them.
I think in some cases
undemocratic.
I think in some cases we should have our cake and eat it.
No.
Have male and female in every constituency.
I think in some cases we should have our cake and eat it because we're already coming from a position of disadvantage.
Well, there's other things other than appointing. This is what I'm saying. You can create a conducive.
You speak of, what is it exactly? Or these disadvantages, what are they?
Oh, for women?
Yes.
Well, you're already looking at.
Are you serious, CT?
I am extremely serious.
Oh my goodness! Just the social bias against women.
Already that we're already living in a patriarchy.
I am extremely serious. These disadvantages, tell me about them.
Of women running for elective politics, it's not a level playing field. You know that.
And at what point is it a level playing field for men?
So what they do is they make it equitable. Well, there's different demographics. We're going to do gender today, and that's what we're talking about. So it's a level playing field in as far as you're a man and you don't face the biases that women face in Kenyan society or in patriarchal societies. Historically and socially, women haven't been regarded as leaders. So to undo these biases, there's a few measures you can bring in so that it's equitable. It's a level playing field. And I don't believe appointment is the way forward. There's certain things we can do within society, I think, to bring about behavioral change in order for the electorate to vote for women.
To get to that point,
because the minute you're appointing women in order to make up the quota, I think you start to undo some of the benefits that we see of democracy.
And you're already creating bias.
The inequalities are evident for anybody who cares to see. The disadvantages you speak of are not the same as inequalities. The disadvantage is even in the thinking and hence, therefore, the approach you have to discussing and making equitable this disparity that we see. The disparity has always existed. If the idea is to follow channels that have been parroted and then spoken about over and over again. That's not how you achieve it. Because what you're talking about here is not putting people in position. You are talking about behavior change. You're talking about
Of the
behavior change
electorate.
innovation. Yes.
Yes.
First of
So
all,
what
no,
you do is
those who
change
want
the
to,
environment.
yes, those who are seeking election and those who elect. Because the greatest disadvantage that women have in elections is not just men, it's their fellow women.
It's the bias, societal bias,
Yes,
throughout,
so-
attitudes, yeah.
The focus, in my opinion, should be that behavior change. Because the disadvantage starts there.
Although it can
The
be
manifestation
argued,
is what we speak of, but the disadvantage is actually there now. If we set about having a discussion that removes the agenda that brings this about, then yes.
although she has a point.
How do
I'll
we
argue
have,
on her behalf.
How do
So-
we have behavior change in a system already that we've said several times is happy with the status quo? We don't really want to change things because we're not really seeing the issue. How do we then
this is
have
where the government is deliberate. You were talking about being deliberate and being the architect of an environment that leads to certain desired outcomes. So, although I will argue in appointing women, maybe we can say for the next 10 years, we will appoint women.
and see what they can do?
No. Also, it will normalize the idea of women
Having
leadership,
women
which
there.
starts to change attitudes. For instance, but I think the media can do this. I've many a time complained about Jeff Koinange's show where he's only bringing men to participate in topical issues, when he brings women, it's this sort of oh, she's done so well, but the women don't come and make comments or comment on issues. Political issues or current affairs issues, which is very dangerous because what tends to happen, politicians do respond to what people say on national media. So if women are not being given a chance to actually make politicians
They're not part
act,
of the process.
they're not being heard. It's very dangerous. Policies
no.
that men will come up with will only affect men.
So
Jerry,
media,
But let's
media,
go back.
this.
No,
media
let's
is
go
one.
back to the
Media is
behavioral
one.
change.
If what you want to achieve is what I understand, go easy on this not being given a chance, on this not being given handouts.
No, I'm not. I'm
Go
talking.
easy on that one.
No.
The approach has
I'm
to be
talking about the
different
idea
if
of
women want
normalizing
the equality that they must be given.
Yes.
And I believe they should be. But this approach, the beggar approach, also we must be
No,
given.
there's no beggar
we should
approach.
be
I am
given.
talking.
It is a beggar approach.
I am talking about changing societal attitudes. We're talking about behavior change, which is changing your attitude and your behavior as the electorate. And one of the things we can do right away is normalize women leadership. If it becomes normal, it's not a taboo. It's not
normal to have
counterintuitive.
it there.
It's normal, which the media can do very easily by showing the few women leaders that we have. Let's maybe amplify them and showcase them a lot more, put more light on them,
I
so that
wholeheartedly
bring more
agree
in
attention
with
terms
to
of
them.
what they do
So
that is positive as opposed to the scandal that may be linked to them, and
Not
that
even the
we've seen
scandals.
that
It's
we've
the whole
seen that being
society
very
and looking at, for
being
example, the
portrayed
woman
very
reposition.
much.
Looking at the woman position and wondering, so what do they do? Why are they there? Well, part of the reason why, and you're talking about forcing it, that's one of the things that the Constitution has done, forcing us to have 47 women already in the National Assembly and saying that you shall elect them from this constituency, elect from constituency called county.
To handle the
you
women's
see-
issues.
Not to handle women's issues. No. They are members of parliament just like everybody else. The only reason they are there, in fact, it's so that we can start having a push towards normalizing women in
It's
leadership.
called affirmative action.
It is
yes.
what it is. So it's not that so that they can go there and they discuss
No,
women issues.
that's not the
in
issue.
fact, even the ones who are nominated, they are not nominated so that they can handle women issues.
No.
They are nominated as members of the National Assembly to do national legislation, to put the national government in check. Everything. They're just MPs just like everybody
The
else.
other thing we need to do is start having conversations that are framed differently. Instead of saying what we stand to gain by having women in parliament or participate in the political process, what we need to discuss is what we're actually losing by not having women there. That's very important, and I think that would resonate more. When we say women, we don't support our own women. If people realize what we're losing out on, as opposed to looking at what we can gain, it's important we realize what we'd lose out on, as well as normalize this and so on. But it's crucial that we start discussing what people are not getting as a result of not having women in parliament. But with regards to appointing them, I'm quite against it as well, especially if you have a quota like at the moment, the 1/3 rule, because it's still not representative of the population, of the populace. And once we do that, we feel we've gone far enough, and this fight to ensure equality in positions of power actually stops. So for me, this idea of the 1/3 gender rule, it can be very misleading and act as a pacifier, because the minute we do reach the one gender, we actually stop.
1/3, yes.
Yeah,
One gender,
The
third rule.
1/3, that one, yes.
yes.
Once we hit that, we stop fighting
Maybe
for
not,
actual
Jerry.
equality.
I
No,
actually
that's
see
what
it
will happen.
differently.
And
Maybe
that's all
not.
we're pushing
By
for.
the
Why
time
are we
if-
pushing for 1/3 in the
No,
first instance?
it's a journey. By the time you get
No,
to
but why
1/3,
not
you'll
start-
have normalized.
No,
You have
no.
normalized that. So by that time, you'll actually be seeing, well, let's
So
actually
why don't we
increase.
say let's
You
do
go to
1/8
40%, you
so
go
that
to
we can
60.
get to 1/3? No, we should start at 50-50. We need half, and then that is the desired objective. How are we going to work to achieve that? I don't know. But the minute you say 1/3, when we reach there, you're going to see there's no clamor to get, there'll be no more fight to get further. And it's still not representative of the population. So for me, the 1/3 gender rule, I don't necessarily agree
So,
with
okay,
it.
so we deliberate to have more women in leadership.
And I think, you know,
we
we
deliberate
talk
to
about
actually ensure that everybody participates.
Right, we talk about behavior change, but that's also something that takes time. And it's clear, there's so many examples of how when you put something in somebody's foresight, you get them to realize that it actually could come about in change. And that's why I was saying appointments at some level actually do make sense, because left as it is, people are not going to make that decision to put more women in positions of leadership.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.